Schiller discovered he had found what seemed to be the perfect loophole between two worlds. If he so chose, he could remain in the Marvel universe indefinitely. He could fall asleep there, and his consciousness would return to Gotham. By falling asleep in his Gotham bed, he would immediately return to his apartment in New York. Given that the flow of time in Gotham was nearly at a standstill, this amounted to an indefinite one-way ticket, allowing him to escape the city's oppressive, smog-choked gloom with a clear conscience. The illusion of comfort, however, is always fleeting. Before Schiller could make good on his promise to arrange the Parker family's weekend physicals, the shadow of S.H.I.E.L.D. had already fallen over him, silent and unseen. It was another workday. Schiller had just finished his rounds and was sitting in his office, using the hospital's internal system to schedule the Parkers' appointments. A knock came at the door, but he didn't look up. In the next second, a sharp, piercing jolt from the spider, sense deep within his mind, made him look up, suddenly alert. A well-dressed stranger stood in the doorway, a professional smile fixed on his face. "Doctor, please don't be alarmed." The man had evidently caught Schiller's momentary tension. He raised his hands in a gesture of harmlessness. "I'm Coulson, agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Schiller peered at him over the top of his glasses, his gaze tracing the man's features like a scalpel. When he spoke, his voice was devoid of warmth. "We'll speak outside. My patients require a quiet environment." Coulson nodded immediately. The two men walked downstairs, one after the other, and settled into a cafe adjacent to the hospital. The acrid smell of burnt, low-grade coffee filled the air. Schiller's brow furrowed, his tone dripping with undisguised provocation. "Is S.H.I.E.L.D. so short-staffed, or is finding a female agent who can fit into a nurse's uniform truly that difficult for you?" Coulson's smile froze. Schiller's reaction perplexed him. According to their projections, an ordinary person accosted by a secret agent should display fear, compliance, or at the very least, curiosity. The man before him, however, was like a territorial cat, bristling with aggression. It seemed Director Fury's assessment had been correct. This Schiller was a tough nut to crack. Schiller leaned back, crossing his arms, his posture radiating extreme impatience. "I have already missed 2 full days of work because of your friend, and now the entire department thinks I'm a drunk or a junkie. If your organization insists on causing me trouble, could you at least wait until I've managed to keep this job? I'm on the verge of being fired. But our files indicate you are merely a temporary psychological consultant for Presbyterian Hospital, filling in for the head of psychiatry, who is on leave. Is that relevant?" Schiller cut him off, his voice rising sharply. "I desperately need this job. If you cause me to lose it, can S.H.I.E.L.D. afford my compensation?" Coulson immediately shifted into an appeasement mode. "I apologize, Dr. Schiller. We have no intention of disturbing you. We simply heard that you are Mr. Stark's psychological consultant, and hope to inquire about his current mental state, of course. We will pay for your time." $1 million an hour, Schiller stated, his face a blank mask. Coulson sputtered, spraying a mouthful of coffee. He wiped his mouth, struggling to maintain his composure. "Dr. Schiller, if you wish to refuse, you don't need to resort to such methods. If you can't pay, don't waste my time." Schiller rolled his eyes, stood up, and walked away, looking for all the world like a disgraced quack whose scam had just been exposed. Coulson didn't stop him. Watching Schiller depart, he pressed the communicator in his ear and reported in a low voice, "Target is highly reactive. He seems extremely protective of his position at the hospital. Yes, he was in a hurry to get me away from there, and just as eager to return. Something is going on. Understood." Schiller strode back to his office and shut the door. He took a deep breath and pushed his telepathic abilities to their absolute limit. Instantly, a torrent of chaotic, insane, and twisted thoughts flooded his mind. Fighting off a wave of vertigo, He transcribed the fragmented emotions into words as best he could, scribbling furiously across a dozen pages. Then, with a click, he locked them in the deepest drawer of his desk. That evening, Schiller returned to his apartment. The spider, sense left a faint arc of electricity tingling on his skin. He knew at once the place had been searched. He scanned the room meticulously, but found no listening or surveillance devices. Clearly, they were professionals, but they were also arrogant. At S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, Nick Fury stared with his one good eye at the illuminated data panel before him, displaying all of Schiller's information. Coulson stood behind him, reporting. He showed an unusual attachment to that job at the hospital. We found a large number of empty liquor bottles and some prescription pill containers in his apartment. He handed over a stack of papers. This is all we found in his office tonight. It seems he disposed of the rest in a hurry. We found a large amount of paper pulp in the sewers, impossible to recover. Fury took the papers. The handwriting was frenzied and illogical. He spoke in a low, gravelly voice. Does he have a mental illness? No. This doesn't read like the ramblings of a single personality. Is he collecting psychological data on his patients? How is he accessing these minds? The records are terrifyingly detailed, containing even the patient's deepest secrets. This is not information that could be obtained through conventional questioning, Coulson added. Hypnosis, Fury countered. Our own psychological experts can do that. Can he get you to tell him what color underwear you liked to wear in elementary school? Perhaps he's just fabricating it all, Coulson guessed. A man who can pinpoint Tony Stark's weaknesses with such precision, even causing Jarvis to suffer a logic cascade, would engage in such a pointless exercise. Fury's voice was laced with ice. He knows far too much about Stark Industries' past, about our old friends. You want him to work for us. He's good at handling people like Stark, and in the future, we're going to have a lot more people like that to deal with. Fury pushed the file aside. In any case, get him out of that hospital first. Let's see what he's really trying to hide. He paused, then added, I hate dealing with these high-level intellectuals. They're too calm, too cautious. You can never see what's going on inside their heads. A man who can make Tony Stark completely lose his composure in 30 minutes and then stroll into Stark Tower the next day. Fury's single eye was as sharp as a hawk's. Do you think he's just some ordinary psychiatrist? Or do you think Tony Stark is really just a playboy who messes around with models? Understood, sir. I'll handle it immediately, Coulson said, taking his leave. The next day, Schiller was in Stark's private workshop when his phone rang. After taking the call, he turned to Stark, who was busy calibrating a piece of armor, and spread his hands with a helpless smile. Well, Mr. Stark, it appears I'm unemployed. Now, I'm afraid I really will need your financial backing. You wouldn't stand by and watch your dedicated psychiatrist go bankrupt, would you? Without turning around, Stark shot back, Is $2 million not enough for you to open 10 private practices? Money is never the issue, Mr. Stark. The issue is accreditation and location. I intend to open a legitimate psychological clinic, not one of those fraudulent establishments on a street corner, competing with fortune tellers. With your resume, Jarvis says you have 3 doctorates and have worked at top hospitals in 6 states. That's not enough. No, because the location I've chosen is rather particular, Schiller said slowly, taking a sip of his iced drink. Stark, tightening a screw, asked casually, Oh, where's that? Hell's Kitchen. ZZZT. Stark's hand slipped. A shower of brilliant sparks erupted from the unfortunate Mark Roman II prototype. He spun around, staring at Schiller in disbelief. I really didn't take you for the Mother Teresa type, rushing off to save the poor and addicted in that neighborhood. Schiller ignored the sarcasm, simply repeating calmly, I need a clinic in Hell's Kitchen, a legal one, and for that, I am willing to grant you one request. He placed a deliberate emphasis on the word legal. "Ha, what could I possibly need from you?" Stark scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm Tony Stark." "Don't you want to know?" Schiller leaned forward slightly, his voice like a baited hook. "If Pepper Potts truly loves you." Another loud bang. This time, the mock Roman right leg blew apart completely. Schiller took an imperceptible step back, watching a soot-faced Stark. The billionaire rubbed his face in a fluster, his eyes darting away. "What are you talking about? What does Pepper have to do with this?" Evidently, the genius had yet to fully confront his feelings for his capable assistant. "I can give you the answer at an opportune moment. Guaranteed accuracy." Schiller's tone was pure temptation. "You've seen what I'm capable of." "Of course Pepper loves me. Every woman in the world loves Tony Stark." Stark blustered. "Is that so?" Schiller countered. "Then to you, she is merely one of the women of the world, entirely unremarkable." Stark fell silent. The only sound in the workshop was the hum of electricity. After a long moment he spoke. "I can help you, but starting tomorrow you don't need to come back. If Pepper asks, just tell her the consultations are over." "Can't afford the fee anymore." Schiller provoked him intentionally. Like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, Stark bristled. "I could afford you if you charged 10 million an hour. I just don't need psychological consultation. I'm not crazy. I'm perfectly fine." Schiller shook his head, his gaze slowly lowering to the mangled suit of armor. "I'm afraid," he said, drawing out the words, "the mock Roman, too, would disagree." Stark followed his gaze, his face flushing crimson. He jabbed a finger toward the door. Get out now." Back in his apartment, Schiller sent a message to Peter. "The physicals for this weekend are all scheduled. The hospital will take care of everything. However, our meeting might have to be postponed. I've just resigned." Peter's concerned reply came quickly. Schiller brushed it off with a simple change in career plans. The boy was clearly touched that a doctor who had already left his job was still honoring a casual promise. He replied eagerly, "Are you still in New York? Maybe we could meet up, grab a bite to eat, or you could come over to my place." Schiller declined. He opened another chat window and sent a message to Charles. "What would you say to the prospect of opening a hospital in hell?" "I'm afraid the devil is unlikely to appreciate the gesture." "It sounds like you speak from experience." "I would advise against it. You may be a talented man, but an ordinary man cannot resist the devil." "But," Schiller typed his final line, "doesn't it take a criminal to fight a criminal?" On the other end of the connection, Charles Xavier stared at the sentence, lost in a long silence. He thought of his old friend, Eric. "Is that what you believe too? That to fight the most vicious of criminals, you must first become another kind of monster?" "No," Charles shook his head. "There had to be a more righteous path to justice. If the only way to fight the devil was to descend into hell yourself, then how was that any different from becoming one of them?" Outside his window, on the lawns of the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, young mutants chased each other playfully. Storm was urging them to head back to class, while Jean Grey stood quietly to one side, watching it all with a gentle smile. All was bright and peaceful. But only Xavier knew that the shadow of the Dark Phoenix had never truly gone away.